So I want to talk to you about the truth today. Now, that's a loaded word. I mean, we live in a world where we have facts, we have alternate facts, we have the same facts that people interpret differently, and all these things are said to be true. On the one hand, we have the scientific method, right? And the scientific method tells us that if we can replicate something in the same way that somebody else did it, then it must be true because we've proven it twice, 3 times, 12 times, whatever it is, okay? But then when we look at science over history, we find that there are some things that were assumed to be facts, like canals on Mars. At the beginning of or the end of the 19th century, telescopes basically saw what looked like canals, and there were all kinds of people who mapped them and all that stuff. And then we discovered in the 20th century, well, actually not really. They're an optical illusion that's caused by dust storms. So what does that mean? That means that what we think is true is constantly being updated when we get more information. So that's one end of the spectrum. On another end of the spectrum, there's something called my truth. And my truth we can find in a lot of sort of post Freudian psychological theories, where people are being encouraged to understand what they really feel and who they really are. And in my experience, the problem with a fair amount of that is a lot of it has to do with projection. A lot of it has to do with, this is my truth about what you just did to me. And it turns out that it really is an expression of what I believe about myself that I put on you. So truth from those perspectives is problematical because it really doesn't represent anything other than a particular perception at a particular point in time. Now, this is not all to say, this is not an argument for relativism and that there is no truth and nothing matters. There is a truth. There are things that really matter and that we know matter. So to take a sort of an obvious statement, we know murder is murder. And we know that when someone has been murdered, they've had their life taken from them in a way that we as a culture and a society refuse to accept. Okay, so those are some parameters. There is a truth that is told to you in your dreams. And in general, what that truth is about is showing you something that you believe and asking you to examine it. So what I'm going to do is read you a short dream that one of my clients had. And he is in the midst of a fairly lengthy breakup with a woman. And this is the dream he has. I'm holding an infant and there is a woman there. I can't tell what she looks like, but she feels like a woman that I just entered a relationship with. There's a lot of anger coming from her, and I'm very anxious about what's going to happen and what's going to happen to the child. I think it is a child that I've had with her. And then there's a date, May 21st, 2005. Okay. Well, it turns out that in 2005, and we couldn't really pin down the exact date, but in 2005, he was in the midst of a divorce, and he was in the midst of a divorce where there were children, young children, and he was pretty anxious about the whole process. It actually turned out okay, but in the midst of it, there was a real question of what was going to happen. What was going to happen to him? What was going to happen to the kids? Was he going to be an active father? All that stuff, okay? So in this end of this relationship, there are no children. And the question is, why is he having this dream at this point? Well, in my work, most of the dreams, I would say 80% of the dreams people have, are really about belief systems that they are ready to outgrow. So in the midst of this strife, where he has developed a perception about his ex-partner and how things are going to get split up and all that sort of stuff, it is based on his experience 15 years ago. And there is a similar amount of anxiety and so forth. But the dreamer is questioning that. The dreamer is saying, look at this. Is this really what you want to repeat once again? Okay. The answer is, of course, no, it's not. And there's no need to. And there is another way to proceed with this, and it is up to him to enter into this in a different frame of mind than he was in 15 years ago. We often think about the truth as though it is something static. It is, you know, in tablets on the top of a mountain somewhere. Imagine, let's take a metaphor. Imagine that you are in a hot air balloon and you're, I don't know, 3,000 feet off the ground. And you look down and you see a river. Well, a river looks like a river. It's a thing. Then you come down, you get out of the hot air balloon, you come stand by the side of the river. And lo and behold, it's not a thing at all. It is constantly moving and constantly changing. And so the truth that I'm talking to you about today is about the truth of who you are. And that is fluid, which doesn't mean that it isn't based in values. Of course, it's based in values. What you believe to be right and fair and honest, those are all things that are the container for your evolving truth. But if you get stuck in a place where this guy was 15 years ago, and you decide that is the truth, and that's how relationships end, and that's how this one's going to end, and I can almost predict the outcome and the battle and the struggle, then in fact you are refusing to dance with the essence of who you are. You are refusing to enter in to the next part of your life, which was not like the last one. We have this concept that when you get to be a certain age, oh, change is really hard. It's not true. The reason change is really hard is because you have developed a reputation and an expectation that comes in from other people on the one hand, and on the other, you've been through some stuff. So you can sort of sit there and tell yourself, well, okay, I know what this is. Your dream is always going to say, not so much, buddy. Maybe you don't really know what this is. Maybe you should really step back for a second and ask yourself if you want to proceed on the basis that you have always proceeded on. And that to me is the power of dreams, okay? They are constantly informing you about a broader truth, a more dimensional truth than the one you had yesterday, okay? So in a world in which people are all running around talking about what the truth is, the way to really ground yourself and center yourself is in the truth that comes from you. And that is an evolving truth. And if you can have the humility to understand that there was information you didn't have yesterday that you now have because you've had this internal conversation with yourself, you'll lead a lot happier, less stressful life, even in the midst of difficult situations. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you soon.